Well, so good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Vidisha Samarasekara, and I'm the Strategic Program Director for Water, Climate Change and Resilience at the International Water Management Institute. It's my immense pleasure this morning to provide opening remarks to this very interesting session, Living with a Changing Cryosphere, Urgent Need for Anticipatory Adaptation event, jointly organized by International Water Management Institute and ICIMOD. So I want today to really, emphasize the importance of us coming together to confront one of the most pressing climate challenges of our time, the rapidly changing cryosphere in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region and its profound implications. Over 1.3 billion people across 8 countries depend on water from the Hindu Kush Himalayas to support agriculture, livelihoods, and ecosystems. But as we all know, this very important and vital water source is under crisis. We are witnessing the rapid melting of glaciers, shifts in snowfall patterns, and the degradation of permafrost, all driven by climate change. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, extreme weather events are all combined eroding the foundation of water security in the region. Ultimately, this means that the main source of water is now increasingly unpredictable, leaving both upstream and downstream communities dependent on glacial melt at significant risk. As we know, environmental shifts don't just affect water. They impact the very livelihoods of people who have lived in harmony with the cryosphere for generations. Poor, marginalized, and vulnerable communities in this region are disproportionately bearing the brunt of these changes, with impacts ranging from reduced agricultural productivity and increased food insecurity to displacement and migration. All themes that we're hearing across different events happening at COP. So as we look ahead, the question we must ask ourselves is not just what will happen if these changes continue, but how can we prepare for a future we know is coming? How can we ensure that communities are not only resilient to the current impacts of climate change, but are also prepared for the uncertain challenges that lie ahead? This is why today's session, focusing on anticipatory adaptation, is critical. The scientific community, including groups like ICIMOD and IWMI, emphasizes the urgent need for proactive adaptation strategies, those that anticipate future change and plan for an uncertain future. We need to think ahead and beyond reactive responses of today and focus on the long-term resilience of the people and ecosystem that depend on these water resources. Today's session then is going to be important as we have an opportunity to share insights on how we can bring together global climate knowledge with local adaptation efforts, ensuring that solutions are not only scientifically sound, but importantly, contextually relevant. We'll explore the specific barriers and enablers of anticipatory adaptation, looking at how we can integrate local knowledge and governance systems into the adaptation strategies we develop. The future of millions depend on our ability to plan for today, for the climate we know is coming, not the one we hope will never arrive. Our actions must be grounded in science and driven by local needs and realities. Together, we can create anticipatory adaptation strategies that not only protect the cryosphere, but also the communities and ecosystems that depend on it. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity, and I wish you the very best in your deliberations today. Thank you.
I know that you have to rush, but I hope you get to listen to our discussion at one point. Since this is a really small pavilion, let's have a more informal discussions, and you will need to come closer because otherwise you will not be. It's going to be difficult hearing. For the panelists we have today, two very distinguished, Emin Kalses and myself, panelists who have worked in this space for a long, long time. Huh? And let me quickly introduce the panelists that we have. One of the panelists had to drop out because of the negotiations work that she was engaged in. The coordinator for the Prime Minister of Pakistan. She was supposed to join us, but because of her other last moment negotiations of meetings we have to go. So we miss her. But we have with us from representing the policymaking bodies, Mr. Naresh Sharma. He is the Undersecretary at the Climate Change Management Division in Ministry of Forest and Environment in Nepal. But importantly, he is also leading the climate finance management section along with Nepal Climate Change Support Program. So he has a lot of experience looking into LAPA's local adaptation, not only at national adaptation, but also local adaptation, as well as somebody who has again experience in negotiations, because he has been as part of NBC groups and also board member of the adaptation government. Cool. So thank you so much, Mr. Salman, for joining us. Our second panelist is next to me, Dr. Vishwas Chitale. Vishwas leads the Climate Resilience Team at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, India. It's one of the leading non-for-profit research institutes in the region. And his work mostly focuses on the assessment of risk assessment, but also developing and implementing digital solutions to make risk reductions and overall climate resilience, building climate resilience. Thank you, Vishwas. The third panelist is Dr. Santosh Nepal, sitting there. He's a researcher on water resources and climate change at International Water Management Institute, Nepal. He has more than 15, 16 years of experience, particularly in hydrological assessments, climate change, and water resource management. And something that really stands out is for somebody who really works at basic scale, but also downscaling it further. And lastly, but not the least, we have Dr. Teresina Kundin-Kemp. She's a senior program specialist at IDRC, that's International Development. I'm very bad with this. Development Research Center. And Georgina has supported within IDRC these adaptation research projects across the three continents, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And presently, she leads the State Change Initiative, a Canada-Netherlands collaboration partnership on local adaptation in the global south. Again, crossing over Africa and Asia, right? So thank you so much. So I think we agreed that we'll make it more informal discussion, but of course it's a panel discussion. So what I propose is that apart from the persons that we are here, we also have this live stream. So there will be audiences who will be listening to us at different time zones, So that's something I just wanted to flag it here. And without further ado, let me start this discussion. Maybe I'll start because, the morning session, I see that Isabella is here. Isabella Couture. She's our Deputy Director General at ICIMOD. Thank you, Isabella, for joining. So we had a very interesting session today morning. Some of you were here. And this session is basically building on it because in the morning session, we really focused on the cryosphere sciences, what's actually happening in the cryosphere. When we talk about cryosphere, it's glaciers, snow, permafrost, and what's happening and what are the kinds of implications it's happening in terms of risk or hazards. But here we will speak more because when we talk about cryosphere, this is one of the irreversible changes because of anthropogenic conditions, right? Once the glaciers are gone, it's gone. So this is not something that we can revert back in short run. In a couple of thousand years, or hundreds of thousands of years, probably, but not in short run. So one thing that we have to recognize, and this is why the title that we have living with the change in cryosphere, because we just have to live with this change because this is irreversible, right? So when we are talking of living with something that is irreversible, we are now thinking of not only what's happening now, and again, next 2-3 because this retreating glaciers, the snowfall pattern changes, this will continue. So how do we keep living with that? And this is where cryosphere science was discussed here. We have moved quite a bit to try to understand what the future of the cryosphere landscape looks like. But in this session, we will discuss more on what does it mean for the livelihood and economy of the people who are living here, but also our students. To start with, let me first ask the experts, regional experts on that. When we're looking at now, it's given the cryosphere is changing. We have to live with it. But if you look at the data and information available today in the morning, it was presented at HKH, a regional scale. But sometimes we have been working on this data and information more at national and also basin scales. I would like to start hearing your insight as to how do you bridge this gap, because this knowledge is available at global national level, whereas decision making has to happen at much local scales. So how do you bridge that gap in the science, not only science, but in general climate science, so that it can be used by the people, by the local governments, in communities, in their decision making? And considering that, when you talk about mountains, we are talking about diversity, topography, and socioeconomic situations, cultures. How do we do that? How do you bring that science scale at the local level?
Thank you, Amina, for these important questions, and thanks for this opportunity to share some of my experience. I think we have a lot of information that we have generated at the national and regional levels. Some of the very alarming facts that you probably already know is by the end of the century, 1/3 of the glaciers from the Himalayan region would be gone, even in the very optimistic scenarios of 1.5 degree world. And if there is a business as usual scenarios, 2/3 of our glaciers will be gone from the Himalayan region. But it's very important to bring that information to the very actionable scale levels and very at the sectoral levels, at the catchment and watershed level, where the real farmers and communities can make some actions. And for this, I think there are three important steps. The first one is the generating the context-specific information at the actionable scale, the watershed scale, tsunami scale. And the second one is to turn that information into different sectoral, the perspective. What does it mean when the water resources are declined, and what does it mean for the agriculture? What does it mean for the hydropowers? Converting that information to the different sectors. And third is very important is that how do we communicate that information to the community, and how do we build their capacity so that they can also own that information and do certain actions? So on the first part, I think it's very important to, bring that projections, particularly on the anticipatory actions, bring that projections to the very local levels, whether it's a downscaling approach or the climate projections or the global climate models. How do we bring that information to the local level? And then the second is like contextualizing that information to the local context. And I think it's very important because the regional or global climate models can give you one set of information, and that information particularly are not considering the local context, the variability. What is the land use change scenarios over there? What are the use of water allocation? How the streams are drying at the very local level? So those informations are not in the global climate model. So we have to really link those informations and then bring that context to the very local level. So, and then we have to also consider the socioeconomic variations, who lives there, the marginalized community, the vulnerable community, how they are dealing, what are their traditional practices which they are already doing some sort of the adaptation activity. So bringing that socioeconomic context is very important. And then the very important point on that contextualizing information is putting those science information to the local community doesn't help unless we make them empowered to use that information. And for that reason, we need to really bring the citizen science, And we had some projects earlier where we used to work with the science teacher in terms of putting the meteorological station at the schools. It's not only that we are getting the information from the schools, but the students are also learning about the scientific instrument. So that is also very important. On the second category of the developing the sector-specific information and adaptation strategies, I think we have to really bring those informations and the implications of changes to the different sectors, whether it's agriculture, whether it's a hydropower, or whether it's a disaster management that we need to really. And then the last point that I would like to highlight is the technological solutions are not enough unless we embed those technological solutions to the existing socio-economic context. So for that reason, we have to really work with the local communities in terms of bringing their capacity, in terms of understanding those informations, and also making certain actions at the field level. And for that also, we have to also really, pass this communicating this information of risk or climate projection or change in the climate change information to the level that they understand, not in terms of number of 2 degrees or 3 degrees, but what does it mean in terms of communities, in terms of the risk it can pose to their different infections. So I'll stop here a minute.
Thank you, Santosh. Moving on from Santosh's insight to Usha's, because you work on developing and finding solutions, right, to build the resilience. Now, when we're talking about cryosphere, these landscapes are going to change. That's so. What needs to be done so that we can continue to live in the places that we call home, that we are not forced to live? So, what kind of approach is really required?
You, Abhinav, for having me on this panel. I think I strongly echo what Santosh said. I think it's all about contextualizing the solutions. But for that, what we need to do is also look into granular level risk assessment models. If say in case of say Himalayan districts, if we go from watershed to watershed or sub-watershed to sub-watershed, the conditions change so much within a single district. So even district level planning is not going to help us in achieving that. In addition to that, like for example, Santosh mentioned large amount of glacial melt is already anticipated by 2030 and by 2050 as per the high-wise report. So we have to look into how it is going to impact the different sectors, like agriculture sector, water sector, energy security aspect of it. If these countries have large dependency on hydropower, is it going to sustain that way, or do we need to plan for alternative action? So I think we have to take it sector by sector and across different geographic scales. So starting with community scale, if we look into locally led adaptation or community-based adaptation, which has been working very well in case of Nepal actually. Nepal has been a leader in the community-based adaptation practices. So we have to learn from these kind of things. Nepal also led the LAPA activity. Almost in 2010, all the local level adaptation plans were ready, which fed into National Adaptation Plan of Action (NAPA) of them. And people from other global south countries really also still give an example of Nepal to look into locally led adaptation practices. So I think these are some of the best practices that already exist. Now, how do we link those practices and how do we integrate current knowledge of climate science that we have? I think we all have to work together in terms of bringing that science to that geographic scale that suits to the local context, bringing the experts to talk about and understand about what changes have happened at the local level and what changes are likely to happen in the next few years and few decades to go. That's real anticipation because, in terms of, say, in case of India, CEW Council on Energy, Environment and Water, we work on assessing the climate risks across India. And in 2021, our report, based on actual occurrence of floods, droughts, and cyclones of past 50 years data, based on that analysis, we were able to tell that nearly 75% of districts in India are prone to either a flood, a drought, or a cyclone. And this landscape is evolving fast. Nearly 40% of districts among these 75% districts are changing in terms of something called swapping pattern of disasters. Now you might also very well relate that some of the drought-prone districts are also becoming flood-prone and vice versa. If such situation exists in plains, I think it exacerbates much more in the Himalayan context, and we have to really learn from it. And in addition to the glacial melt, we have to look into the compounding risks that exist in terms of flooding, in terms of globs. I think glob occurrences has also been one of the key concerns, and also in terms of flash flood events. Just one example. one of the Himalayan states, Himachal Pradesh, saw 35 flash flood events in year 2022 alone in that. So if these kind of events are occurring at massive scale and the increase, the intensity and frequency is increasing, we must look into it and we must anticipate what's going to happen in near future, and we must plan our adaptation accordingly.
So just a follow-up question. Is it possible to downscale the existing models to the scale where that's supposed to be? Is that progressive? Is it what I understand from your?
Yeah, so currently, Santosh is the climate scientist here, but I will also add my bit here. So currently with Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, we are in collaboration working on regional downscaling of climate projections as well. Santosh, you might want to add there. So far, there was 25-kilometer data that India had downscaled for global projections for regional climate models. But now IITM is also like they have got supercomputer access, and now they are going to downscale it to 12 kilometer. I mean, in my view, 12 kilometer is still not suited to the local context, but that's what the best we can get for this year. I think we still have to put more efforts on going further downscale. But I think that's where the hybrid approach of top down and bottom up assessments come in picture. So we are also happy to report that jointly with ICIMOD, we are working on something called Anticipatory Action for Himachal Pradesh state, where we will use the climate data that is available at best possible resolution, which is 12-kilometer resolution, and do ground level assessments of risk using questionnaire surveys, using focus group discussions, and using land use and land cover analysis. Because I think in terms of remote sensing data, I think the science has progressed a lot. We have up to 1 meter data commercially available, or actually 10 centimeter data commercially available. But in case of open access data like Sentinel, etc., we have gone up to 10 meters. So we can very well assess what the land use land cover changes have happened using that 10-meter data and overlay the climatic projections on top of it, and we can really make a holistic picture out of it. But I think Santosh, would you like to add on?
Very practical examples. I think sometimes this discussion about whether we have a sufficient resolution data at the field level to exercise. My point of view is like we have sufficient information. In Nepal in 2019, for Ministry of Environment and Environment, while they were developing the National Adaptation Plan, where I was with ICIMOD, and we developed these future climate scenarios of Nepal of 10-kilometer resolution. And then recently also, when we were working with the new version of the global climate models, we didn't go down lesser than the 10 kilometer, because this gives you enough information to do. What is lacking is the real action that we have to do. Because even if you go below 10 kilometer, 5 and 1, there is a very less variation, because what we are downscaling from the 100 kilometer grid of the global climate. So I think this narration that we might not have sufficient resolutions, I don't agree. We have sufficient information to make certain actions. Once we start, then there will be other opportunities to further downscale.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear from two physical scientists talking about not only modeling and that grid, but also the information and knowledge that's available locally and utilizing that. That's not something that you often hear. So thank you so much for that. Mr. Sharma, as Vishwas was mentioning, Bhutan has really been, when it comes to pioneer, when it comes to really trying to look into adaptation at local scale. Napas are like really something that inspires a lot of people. But I'm sure there are other challenges that the government of Nepal is facing. Because adaptation, one of the things is your division and your ministry is related for the entire adaptation, but then the adaptation needs are so diverse. It's across different sectors. So what are the kind of challenges that you have faced when you are making all this progress, and how are you responding to this? Like different views at different scales. Now that Nepal has also this decentralized with local governments and all that. So can you share some of the things that you have done, of course, but also some challenges that you are facing and how you are addressing?
Scientists and all the colleagues representing here. I'm very pleased to let you know, and I'm in the beginning also. I'm very happy to hear about the scientists who do about what they are doing, and they are sharing more things. What what we did in Nepal, and what they are thinking about to do also. They just concluded their remarks. I think said with this, I want to draw you back to the field where we really implement adaptation work. Let me acknowledge three of our NGOs. They are presenting a liver. They are the one who are the champions for liver. In Western Nepal, they are the one who are real practicing adaptation work back to the field. Then it will be very yes to praise, TRADAC. They are working far flung in Nepal, where far and flung area is there, and they are working adaptation work. I different, I've been developing, harnessing the different resources. I really they are providing support via adaptations work to address the poor and vulnerable people. And YAE also, this gentleman who just who's taking picture is also they are also providing support. I mean, with acknowledged presence of their implementation work, let me bring back what government did and what we are thinking to do. If you see the Maracas, COP that was decided for NAPA activity, the National Adaptation Program of Action, that NAPA document we formulated around 2010, I think. During that, formulation process, we exercised, we gained a lot of practice, knowledge, and that helped us to process further. That was the urgent and immediate priority program Nepal formulated it. And with this foundation, we move forward for local adaptation plan of action formulation strategy, the framework. Under that framework, we formulated the local adaptation plan of action for the local government. That was one step that Nepal took for the implementation process. In the beginning, Santosh just mentioned about the science. Yes, there is always, necessary mandatory things that we practitioner take support, and that has been outsourced from the concern and research agency or data scientists. They had helped us regarding the vulnerability and risk assessment part. That has been completed while formulating local adaptation plan of action. Basically, local adaptation plan of action was formulated taking care of urgent and immediate adaptation actions at the field level. That was compiled short term, medium term, and long term by 5 years. That was delineated, time was delineated 5 years, and that was one we started during the formulations of NAPA process. Then government formulated local climate change policy also. In climate change policy, government highlighted adaptation is our priority, though to shake hand and to provide gesture to the international community. We are also about to harness, and we would also like to continue the mitigation work also. As provisioned by in the climate policy, adaptation is our priority. Then we decided 80% of the resources that must go to the poor and vulnerable people. That means out of the capital. That is one of the things that Nepal has shown to the global global north. Global North.
Globally,
Global North. What is just I want to cash out your words on the Global North. So these are the activity that Nepal is highlighting and taking care of with this also. Nepal also initiated on budget on treasury system of the development partners resource. We would like to harness our available resource. That may be the bilateral, multilateral, or implementing entity support. That we would like to continue from the on budget on treasury method. That means whatever the budget that comes, it goes to the Ministry of Finance cover. Then Parliament will approve the budget and program. Then Ministry will implement program accordingly. This is one of the aspects that Nepal is doing, taking care of all about the things. So now we have gained the adaptations knowledge and practice, and from the poor and vulnerable people who we learned a lot actually. And while talking to the climate issues, I think couple of issues we need to take care about the science and process that must be respected. That is the mandatory provision. I don't want to go away from that. That is not my part also. As a bureaucrat working in the policy level, we should take about the implementations. While implement the project in the climate science, we need to take care of a couple of things. One, vulnerability must be, the graduation must be there for the poor and vulnerable people. If they are in the B1 level, they must be graduate B2 level after implementing the adaptation process. That is important for us. And economic upliftment, just Santosh mentioned about the data doesn't give any fruits to the poor and vulnerable people. But unless they have some economic activity to uplift their livelihood, that is another is mandatory indicator. So these two indicators we can monitor and we can evaluate from the LAPA activity that have been conducted in Nepal. This is the major milestones are. And whenever I go to this Kedak area, far and from this, that is our Pranali province, people doesn't ask you to give development. Previously, people used to ask, give us some development activity. Now, people started thinking that climate change is their severe problem they have been facing, and they started asking to the government and development partners that give us some LAPA activity. LAPA has been branded in the far and flung area. This activity of implementation process that has been translated into the people's tongue. This is one of the, after having all the experience and collected about the local experience from the field level, then we formulated national adaptation plan that is for short term, medium term, and long term by 2050. Our national adaptation plan will be over, taking care about all these international provision, mandatory provision, and provision given by the climate change policy. Also, we also formulated second national NDC implementation plan. These are the two documents now. Nepal would like to Nepal would like to harness the available resource in the to implement the project. Taking considerations of adaptations work in the NDC, now I would like to draw your attention about government has prioritized on the hydropower sector, and with government resources, we are trying to fulfill the energy target. That is our compulsory target that we have fixed it. And other target in the NDC government has announced or implementation plan has announced that upon receipt of the international support, as per the given mandatory provision, they must support from the developed country. We are hoping to implement our NDC. With this, I don't want to elongate and keep boring you long time. So I stop here, and later on, if I get the time, then we discuss accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I think that was a very nice and short discussion of Nepal's experience with NAPA's, LAPA's, NAP and all. I think it's good to know. And thank you, Libert, Ketak, and YSC colleagues that are here. But can I have one question? It's very ambitious, the NDC, NAP, the targets that you have mentioned. And I'm very inspired that 80% of these funds, of adaptation funds, has to go to the local communities, something that you guys have. I think it's really inspiring. What are, if you have to, say two challenges that you might be facing when we are talking about implementation? Now we have the plan, we understand, as you said, we know what needs to be done. In your voice, what would be that two challenges while implementing this that you already foresee?
So thank you, Amina, giving me again the floor. Let me be honest with you. First, there must be if you compare with the local government, one local government to another, one big difference what we have observed in Nepal is the leadership. Leadership. If you are a capable leader to handle and implement the project, elected leader, I mean they run project very smoothly. And one thing. Another thing is that due to the we are working in the far and flung area. And our climate doesn't suit for the 12 months working period. That is one of the problem what we are facing. And resources and all these all are the bureaucracy resources. I am not going to see the problem. If you are able to make a capable leader then I think 80% of our adaptation work or any development works, any climate change or development works, that will give a good, bear a good fruits, I mean. So these are the main challenge I do feel, and I mean there are so many mitigating things I'm not going to talk, but adaptations after formulating local adaptation plan from the field, and they were that was identified by the local. I mean they are very interested to carry on the projects by getting fund, and not I'm talking about the available fund from the different donor agency. Government is also giving priority, and they are also putting in the national buffer to address the climate change as much as they can. These are the priorities we see in the government program. If we see the government, an annual program and budget, then program priority is there. If we see our government, president declared in the parliament on policy and program, addressed to the parliament by the president. Lot of climate change issue are there. So why I am linking, from president to the local level, people are asking LAPA activity to address the climate change, and honorable presidents also very interested to move forward with all these government program to address the climate change. These are the scenario, but we are trying, we are doing, and we would like to put our hand for the solidarity of the international organizations, and ICIMOD is they are lucky and fortunate. We have opportunity that this location is Kathmandu, and we have a very close relation with you. I'm looking forward to work, scientific part with you, and we are ready to move forward with the implementation. After putting all the things on place, and really push forward with implementation, and not only implementation and not only disbursement of the resource. We like to collect the effectiveness and after monitoring it and evaluation program, so that people will be benefited. And finally, and we want to see two results. Again, I would like to highlight graduation of the local people, poor and vulnerable people, that must be done, and economic upliftment there must be done for the poor people. Otherwise, climate change will just be a. I don't want to use the different words here. I just leave here and think yourself.
And I think you brought a very important point of capabilities, because the capabilities really vary. Different people, different governments, and that would be a huge development going forward. Now, just moving from, we spoke briefly about the local level, the demands for adaptation needs that's across the different scales. Let me come to Georgina, Dr. Tim. You've been working with IDRC, one of the, I would call one of the most important partners when it comes to research and climate globally. Korea, now Claire, in partnership with FCTO, we have been like one of the biggest climate researchers. We're looking at these different needs for knowledge or for research, let's put it that way. What are some of the shifts that IDRC as an institution has also? Because now what we are slowly learning is research is important. That needs to need to action. And then while talking about action, what Mr. Sarma says that is issue of capabilities, issue of finance, that's a different story altogether. But what are the thoughts and approaches? And I'm sure there must be some shifts that IDRC also as a research is going through.
Thanks, Amina. Yes, maybe just for those who don't know, IDRC is a research funder. We were created 50 years ago and have a mandate to support the development research in the global south. This is quite important in terms of understanding what we support. IDRC has always supported action research. We've never supported blue skies research. There always has to be an application. But I would say in the last around 5 years, we've seen a sort of growing understanding that when we think about the slowness with which society is responding to the climate challenge, this is not a knowledge problem in the way that scientists have been trained to think about knowledge problems. Yeah? So scientists tend to think couple of centuries of scientific training says that the right question is to say, what do we not know? What are the knowledge gaps? But in the middle of a crisis, a different kind of question needs to be asked. Like, what do we know? What can we act on now? You actually said it. We know enough to act. We've known enough to act in most regions for more than a decade. So we really have to think differently about the role of scientists, the role of science, particularly for I would say sustainability research is writ large, obviously climate science in particular. And so we are thinking about that. What is this? It's not only a changing role of science, it's the ways in which scientists behave in relation to the problem that they are researching and how they think about partnerships in that context. So one of the things that we are doing, I mean, I often say it's not a knowledge problem, it's a knowledge interaction problem. And if we think of this as a knowledge interaction problem, then we have to start looking at the space between what we know and what we want to do. And in that space between, who are those actors? Researchers are over here on the knowledge end, and we've got policymakers and people taking action on the action end, but who's in the middle? Who are those intermediaries? And really being quite serious about finding those organizations. They're often NGOs. I'm not sure who's, it sounds like we have some of those sort of actors here that play this really important connecting role, but who funds them? Because research funders like IDRC historically were putting all the money into researchers only, and we're trying to rethink that. So one of the programs that we have is really trying to support these intermediary actors who connect knowledge and action. For example, in Nepal, we have a team who are accompanying Dulikal municipality in the development of their laptop. These are not researchers, these are intermediaries whose job it is to be able to speak to researchers, whose job it is to build relationships with the local municipality and work with them in the development of an evidence-based laptop for that municipality. So trying to fund these intermediary actors in a sort of new space. The other thing that we've just done is we took some government officials from Dulikal to Kenya to meet with Makuene officials in Makuene County, because peer-to-peer learning between government actors is as important as connecting them to more researchers, because in Kenya they've really moved quite far ahead with getting climate finance down to the local level, and Nepal was interested in learning about how Kenya is doing that and what lessons could be learned between those two countries. So thinking about South-South learning instead of trying to bring expertise in from the north to the south, how do we network between countries who face similar challenges? And then, as you know, Amina, and you will know from Carrier, when we are, I mean, there are still obviously knowledge gaps. I'm not saying that knowledge is sorted out. There are things that we still need to know. But the kind of research that we're really wanting to support in that space is sort of co-creation, action-oriented research. In the past, we would have really pushed for research that was positioned for use. All that means is that as a researcher, you're asking a question that is policy relevant. I think now we're saying, well, that's not really good enough. It's policy relevant, but who is your audience? Who is your partner in that project? And really thinking about the partnership, because one thing we've learned is that knowledge is not an artifact that I can give you, hold it intact. What I know, you will know. You have to come with me on a learning journey for us to understand something together. And so thinking about partnerships in research projects as well. I think I'll stop.
I really like this. Slowly it's coming up, like research to action. Let's not wait for perfect research, because action is needed now. So whatever is there, let's use that. And partnerships. Nobody can solve this complex problem by themselves. So the partnerships of all stakeholders coming together, that has come very strongly. Yes, go ahead.
I'm tempted to share a very interesting story that recently I think everybody is probably experiencing the challenge of heat wave across all the global south countries. So, I mean, in India also it's a major problem. There are 23 out of 36 states are heat wave prone. And last year, 2023 was still okay because we only had one heat wave and cities were taking some action on it. But this year was drastically different. This year, over a period of 2 months of April and May, we had 4 heat waves of almost 1 week each. And that's when everybody started thinking, okay, then what action do we take? Is it only drinking water? Is it going to help us, or is it only staying indoors is going to help us? But I mean, this is where the role of anticipatory action comes handy. Like, we have to learn about what are these kind of challenges that are going to evolve, evolve in the coming years. Also, I mean, Himalayan cities are also no different from that. We might think that they are in cool places, but in case of Leh, which is a major airport, due to the temperature increase and pressure drop, the flights were not able to take off. So these are new challenges that are emerging in various parts of the world, and then how do we deal with that is where the role of science comes in. I think you rightly highlighted the point of actionable solutions. So in India, there is something called city level heat action plan, and National Disaster Management Authority has mandated all the city authorities to develop their heat action plans. Now we know the capacity that the city has in order to understand the technicalities of it. There are small and big size 4,500 cities in India. When are we going to achieve all of the city level heat action plans? That's not possible. So we thought, can we bring in some sort of climate database automation in the process, and can we support 300 top heat wave prone cities in India to address the challenge? And we have just initiated that project in July. The project is for next 3 years, where we are going to support 300 cities in India to develop their city level heat action plans. But when we developed it for a city of Thane, which is a coastal city. But when we developed the plan, then they asked us, okay, you tell me 5 solutions and I'm ready to invest money in it. But do we know the solutions? No, we don't know the solutions. What are the solutions? Then we started looking into different solutions. So there are various ways, like there are net zero cooling shelters, like a cubicle that's set right in the middle of city, which is net zero, all solar powered, where people who are working outdoors can go take some rest and come back and start working. There are cool roofs, there are cool paints. So we started looking into the solutions, and now I have put my whole team to work on developing a compendium of heat resilience solutions, looking into 20 plus countries and 40 examples from within India, to at least compile a list of solutions that we can offer to them. You look into this, you look at what context suits you, and then you implement it. We are also going to look into the cost benefit analysis of these solutions, because this is the new landscape. We have to deal with these kind of risks. So I just thought I will share with you as well.
Thank you. That's a very nice short one. Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, Vishwas tempted me to speak. Since he started talking about the lowland, the India's problem. So let me bring back to you to the Himalayan region. So we are also observing and facing, due to the climate, change effects about the avalanche and lake burst or earthquake problem. So that is one of the problems that we say, that has initiated in the high Himalaya and the lower part. Even the temperature is rising also in Nepal, also from Himalaya to the lower part. That sort of experience is not there, but for us, if we see migration is only solution, but since we very easy to talk about migration, there must be cultural attachment, physical attachment, emotional attachment, and people, people make a hue and cry. These all are the systems. I think we need to take care, from mountain to the sea level now. That is the reason that government of Nepal has persuaded the issue about climate-induced loss and damage, and to protect our Himalayas. This is our, priority for this COP activity, and government and honorable president also organize high-level events. Let's work on it and how ICIMOD can help, or other partners in the platform, or COP29 value or other partners. We can work together, and we need to work and address immediately. Time is running out, and this problem will be the day by day, and
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing. Now we talked about partnership, co-creation of knowledge. Now let's take in the spirit of co-sharing, because I believe we all agree that let's keep it more informal. Our panelists have spoken, but I know at least one person, Sanjay, Dr. Sanjay, because I know that you had reached out to us when you mentioned about our panel that you would be interested to share some of your thoughts on anticipatory. Because here it's not only, we are not talking about the adaptation now, but also of the future, because we have to live with this future, right? If you don't start to work now, then we can't change the future if we don't act now. So Dr. Sanjay, very shortly if you would like to share your experience.
Yes. Uh, just very quickly, I'm Sanjay from United Nations Economic and Social Commission, or ACF. We have a program, Regional Climate Outlook, WMO, together. We have taken this for third pole. Third pole means all the Asian mountains, starting from Russia, then the Pamir, Himalaya, Hindu Kush, all. There is a unique regional information among the mountains. What I wanted to flag is this: if you look at the problems of mountains, the glacier hedges, those are interrelated to a very large extent. Also, those glaciology, biosphere science. So, recent surprised to know it's led by China from central part of the Asian mountains. 10 cent, they are taking care. Pakistan, Karakoram and Pamir mountains and India, the Hindu Kush Himalaya with Bhutan, Nepal. But the co-creation of the knowledge, the point when you want it, we develop what they call consensus outlook. Before the monsoon, before the winter, what is going to be the climate scenario, weather scenario of the mountains in three different nodes. So India will lead this part, Pakistan will lead Pamir part, China will lead that. Now what is that validation does, because we have temperature, but you also have snow melt. Taking three parameters, generating impact water sector, into the food system, into the energy system, and developing what might be things, what could be the action scenarios. And that is the adaptation, starting from a system forecast and going to the climate scenario. So this is the initiative I thought I must back. All hydromet agencies in Nepal, for example, DMH of Nepal is a part of it. In India, I am a part of it. So this is the stakeholder bringing science to the action.
Thank you, Sanjay, for sharing, and definitely something that we have to follow after the committee discussion. If anybody else wants to share your thoughts in spirit of co-sharing, please do so now. Before we have to wrap in about 3
Indian agriculture practices. We are working on that. We civil society have the knowledge and practices on the ground, but we don't have the scientific data and scientific research. That is something how we are lacking for that. We don't have that much capacity and resources, scientific research and that. But when we see in the field, to meet the SDG target, you need the development in the
just 1 second.
Agree that there needs to be more climate resilience in the development. Totally agree. I don't think that any of us disagree. We're running out of time, but we want to have.
I just want to echo to what you were speaking earlier. You've spoken about this is a very high priority from president office to the taluk level. But what we increasingly seeing is each ministry and department might do the things in different ways when it comes to adaptation. Is there any streamlined budget allocation? Are we talking about disaster risk reduction? See, ministry allocation, department allocation, or silo. So integrated, when you talk about adaptation action, is about cross-sectoral collaboration is very, very important. So I feel that is an area that people have to talk about. NAP and the provincial. I don't think countries have developed provincial action plans till now. Only Sri Lanka and few other countries have started developing subnational action plan. The other point, the heat stress he was talking about, one of the important we should not forget is about the water management and the water storage. So we have seen cities by cities closing of all the natural infrastructure, and we talk about heat stress, and we are increasing our AC coolers significantly, and also the tree cover. You know, if urban city want to develop or expand, they cut the trees, and it takes 30 to 40 years to recover the canopy for mitigation efforts. So this is something where we need to also advocate the importance of not just talking about infrastructure, but the natural infrastructure has to be protected very well. These are two observations.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me. I really forget to talk about the coordination part. As per the business allocation rule of government of Nepal, Ministry of Forest and Environment is the focal point. We do coordinate accordingly in the center. Before coming here, also I would like to recall two events. Climate Summit was organized, and the Right Honorable Prime Minister attended the program, and all the seven provincial ministers were invited, but few joined in the virtual meeting, and the three joined in the three joined physically in the climate summit. And we had a provision of the Right Honorable Prime Minister. So one committee is there, and where seven, including from other member, seven province chief ministers will be are representing in the committee. And with this, we have also interministerial coordination committee. We have also province level climate change coordination committee, and for implementation, we have local government implementation coordination committees also. But these committee are very efficient, but it depends upon the leadership of the individual of the chairmanship of the project. I do that there is a problem, but we are trying to enabling them, and we are trying to strengthen them. And we are trying to put every committee in function, and we have also formulated province level climate change policy that is under draft, and hopefully government will endorse soon. Then we plan accordingly, and we start accordingly taking care all the activity. We would like to continue from the province level and the local government. The central level government, we don't want to work, but in coordination with the central level, we do have regular meeting, and we are trying to bring all this gap together and trying to solve the problem, coordinating in the central level. There is gap is there, but what now the efficiency of coordination seems very on a positive note. That's why I can say thank you.
Thank you for also sharing the steps that you're taking. So now we are really running out of time. For closing this,
which is a little bit difficult in this space. But I just want to focus on a few things that your conversation triggered in my mind. So I think we all know we're heading to 1.5. We're trying to advocate to stick below 1.5, but we know we're pretty close. But that has a particularly heavy impact on the mountain region. And our speaker from Hanali mentioned about this fact that when there's an event, all that effort just gets wiped out. And that's something that is so striking in the mountain region. And when you walk around Kathmandu post the September 27th event, it is really disheartening. But what is amazing is that mountain people have this extraordinary resilience. Everyone just picks up, they've lost their road, their wall, their everything, and yet everyone's smiling and just picking up the tools and fixing everything. So that resilience is really quite extraordinary, but there's a huge cost. So I think two things kind of come to mind from that how do we support those events and how do we enable people to bounce back faster? I don't think we've got the solution to that. Also, we've been piloting many different solutions for so long, but having been in this business myself for a long time, I get myself frustrated because a lot of these solutions are not fit for 1.5 world, but yet we've not managed to get the funding and the finance to really invest in these co-creative approaches and to look at, well, okay, organics is a good, climate resilient agriculture is good, but we haven't really sorted out the pest and disease management issues. So there's many of these innovations that really need to move forward. They need to move forward fast, and they're not moving fast enough. And the projects that we get tend to be small, and I've got some figures, I mean, don't quote me on this, but they're figures from ICIMOD. 17% goes to community. Out of all the global climate funding, only 17% is reaching community. I mean, that is not good enough. And in a way, that needs to be our next major lobbying factor. Is yes, we need more money, but equally, the money we've got has to get down to the people that really need it. And that kind of touches on what you were speaking of, Santosh, which is, yes, there's all these great global tools and global data sets, global scientists, but the people living in Dankuta or Kavre or in Kana, they need to know, they need to have the kinds of tools that work for them. So we've got a way to go on that still. So just to say, well done for all your work. We've got to keep fighting the fight and advocating in these kinds of fora for the mountain communities and enabling them to be ready to anticipate the future needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for participating, and thank you for the wonderful. Thank you particularly.
Laterally, I entered and started talking. I was not prepared. But it was very, let me tell you, you off this mic.
I know.